So we are here with another interview with Cory, and let's just start it off with you telling the channel a bit about yourself.
Okay, awesome. My name is Cory N. Davis, and I am an author living outside of Tokyo, Japan. And I've been writing since I was around 7 years old. I used to write some really crazy stuff when I was a kid. But I absolutely have loved writing for a really long time. And I have just recently gotten an opportunity to be published for the first time. My short story got published in the Stygian Collection, which I'm very, very excited about. And I am currently in the editing process of my first novel and getting that some feedback right now. So quite busy with that. Yeah, I'm pretty new to publishing, but I've been writing for quite a long time. My favorite though, short story is probably my favorite format. I love the immediate gratification of finishing a short story. And also there's just a lot more experimentation I feel I can do with it. So science fiction is probably my most favorite genre that I work in, but I've also done a lot of dark fantasy. I've done some epistolary form, which is very interesting to toy around with. So like letter format between characters or articles between different places.
Oh, I like that.
And yeah, I'm excited to keep working and hopefully get a novel out soon.
I'm excited for that too. I was gonna say, like, I can tell that you love the short story format because you do it very well. Like you just encapsulate like everything I would want in a short story. And like I think yours is one of the shorter pieces, but it says so much and it just takes you like instantly into that setting. So you've nailed it. And as someone who cannot write short stories at this time, I'm reading that. I'm like, okay, I gotta take everything out of this if I can. So it's
I
been
I
great.
honestly struggled with short story, especially in university when I took creative writing courses. The way I've got some beef with how university handles writing. Specifically, they don't teach you how to write a short story. They teach
No.
you writing in general, but they do not teach you the heartbeat of a short story. And that is critical because if you try to just sit down and write something that concise, if you have no idea of the structure of it,
Mhm.
you're not going to make it. Because most often, for a lot of people, they've read novels, chapter books. That's what they know because that's what's more normalized to read. There are
Mhm.
short story collections out there, but they're not as popular. If you go to the library, there are only going to be a handful of those versus the tons of novels at your disposal as a kid.
Yes.
So when you think of a story, you usually think of the novel. And
You've got
that
that
means that
format locked
most,
in.
yeah, exactly. It's locked in of like, it takes this much time to introduce a character, this much time
Mhm.
to do this. This is the larger thing. So your brain is already, when you think of a story, you're already formulating it in a larger view. You're
Mhm.
already looking at a larger piece of time than what a short story would be. And if you're not trained to look for the shorter thing, you're not going to be able to.
Mhm.
And so I definitely struggled throughout university to get those stories shorter. Even if I did complete a short story, which I had to for some of my classes, they were on the longer side.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the longest works I have are the old stuff from back in university. I've gotten shorter as I've gone on. And the thing that really turned the table for me for short story format was reading a giant, like this thing could kill a person. It was massive, a huge collection of Ray Bradbury short stories.
Oh,
And
I
the
should
thing
do
is,
that because I love Ray
you should.
Bradbury. I should do
Ray
that.
Bradbury is great. And it makes me really sad that most people only know him for Fahrenheit 451
Yeah.
because I believe that's one of his weaker stories,
Hmm.
honestly. Comparing that to his short stories are so much better. And I think they're really like the heart of a lot of his talent was there.
Okay.
And because I was reading so much, like I just plowed through this thing at one point in my life, I started understanding that beat a lot better. And that kind of taught me in a way how to do short story. If for anyone who doesn't have time to do something like that, there is a fantastic lecture on Brandon Sanderson's YouTube by Elizabeth, who specializes in short stories. And she does a whole thing on the I think it's called like story coding or
Okay.
something like that.
I think I've heard of
And
that before.
she uses that plotting device to show you what a short story is.
Mm.
It's it's so good. It's one of the best lectures on writing format I've ever seen in my life, and it's focused on short story because that's her specialty. She actually has people write kind of a general little draft throughout the lecture, so you actually start using what you're
Mm.
learning in class. So hard recommend if anyone wants to learn
Oh,
short story format, try
let
that.
send me the link to that. And
Absolutely.
I will link it in the description of our interview here because I think I'm
Absolutely.
not the only one who would be interested in that. Because
Mice, that's what it's called. MICE. And
okay.
it stands for the different elements or ways to like start and close code, essentially, of
Oh,
how you
cool.
create the format. Um, that was the format. But yeah, I will send you the link. It's phenomenal. I did a video of a Let's Learn video on my YouTube channel a year ago, over a year ago at this point, going over the mice format and trying it out,
Okay,
because
cool.
it's really quite good. It's not a perfect format, but I feel like if again, if you want to learn short story, I think that's one of the easiest ways to do it.
I love formulas like that because when I actually made myself finish a draft because I was a non-finisher. It was it was through like NaNoWriMo and the Save the Cat method. So my first book, A Time When Demons, like I tell people I didn't promote it as intensely as like I might with future works because it was the one that I put out there to, to do something by a formula and get it out in the world. And I think it's good on its own, but it's not my favorite thing that I want to push so hard. But let that, that formula really helped me to do that. So I'm a big fan of formulas.
Oh yeah,
And
I feel
even
like
just
for
to
me,
start.
yeah, for me, it really helps me feel better. Like the mice is really good at closing. I think that's a strong point as an outline, because whatever code you open a story with, whatever questions, ideas, concepts, you're going to reverse order close it, just
Hmm.
like you would close code. And it
Perfect.
creates a very satisfying ending when
Hmm.
you do that, because that's how your brain is expecting these things to close
Yeah.
subconsciously. So when they do close in order, you're like, ah, that was nice.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And endings are tough in the short story. I find that if, unless it's something that has just come to you, like the fully fleshed idea, like, oh, I know where this starts and middle and the end, which, rarely happens. Unless that happens, like you need to know your ending. Otherwise, you're just gonna sort of keep going and going and going, which is what happened to me when I started writing something for the collection. But
Yeah.
um talking about this and about your learning videos and stuff, obviously you have a YouTube channel. That's one of the things that sort of connects us all in the anthology. Do you want to tell us a bit about what you do on your channel? And also, the name, I'll link it below, but tell us a bit about it.
Of course. So it's just the same as my author name, Cory N. Davis. It just has the N in it, which sometimes shows up for me on screen and sometimes doesn't.
Yeah.
But my YouTube is mostly a collection of videos of things I'm learning because I'm still learning about things within the industry. Like I've been writing for a long time, but publishing, totally new to it. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm definitely just kind of showing people what I'm learning and kind of what I'm going through, asking for other people's experiences. I've been really helped out with some information from other authors in the community, just letting me know my comments. So like, oh, I usually do this. Like we try this, like try that other system. And that's been really useful. And I also do a lot of editing videos because I am in editing for some really big works. So this is something that I don't feel is talked enough about in the community, probably because
Hmm.
it's boring, to be honest.
Well, and a lot
I
of
mean,
people
it might
don't
be,
don't sort of do it as much. They'll do like a bit of an edit and then they pass it off to, their editor or something like that.
yeah, or they pass it on to just beta readers,
Yeah.
and they don't even get it professionally edited, which,
Yeah.
it is what it is. But what that means is I think a lot of people don't understand how much time actually realistically probably goes into the work on
Mhm.
your own.
Oh, yeah.
heard horror stories talking to some editors, like asking them like what kind of like what's the state of stuff you get, like, you know, what's your day like? And some of the horror stories I hear where people don't even put their stuff through a spell check, doesn't even touch a spell check, and I'm like, why not?
I have heard of some people who are like, well, I finish it and that's it. And that's why I try to write. I mean, I'm very lucky because my mom is an editor, so she edits me. But like I always try to edit as much as I can first. And one of the reasons why I write articles and do some videos about like how to pre-edit is because like I know that pain. I'm like, why would you just dump it on someone like with nothing? You gotta go through it. Come on.
Especially because, like, from my perspective, when I send this to a professional editor, I'm going to pay a lot of money for this. I want them to be catching the stuff I couldn't see.
Yeah.
Like, why would I send them a bunch of stuff that I could have done by myself?
Yeah, it is going to
You know what I
cost you
mean?
like
Like, I
way,
could
way
have taken
much more.
care of that
Yeah.
so they can take care of the finer details,
Hmm.
you know, which is, I think, something that their training better equips them for that I don't have. I don't have that editor training. I don't know the finer, tiny stuff and what I'm looking at. I just know the larger stuff. So that's
Yeah.
the stuff that I should be taking
And
care of.
and you don't want to make them hate you right off
Exactly. That
right off
too.
from the
Don't
get-go.
damage your
Like
relationship.
because once they go through all of your like little things that you could have fixed, they're not gonna want to pay attention to your story anymore. They will,
Oh,
but they're gonna like you a little less.
yeah, because it's also like a sign of attention for you towards your own work. Like,
Yeah.
how much do you care about your work? How much pride do you take in your work?
Hmm.
You know, it's like it is a kind of a fine line because I feel like a lot of us who do like take the self edit seriously, we tend to be perfectionists. So that's its own devil.
Yeah.
Um,
That's why I tell people I'm like, set a number of how many times you're going to go through it and do not allow yourself to go over that count. Like I
exactly.
do 3 run-throughs and I will not let myself go further. At that point, I am done.
Yep. I had to stop myself at a certain point and just be like, okay, at the very least, I need to get feedback from other writers.
Yeah.
I'll go over it one more time after I get that feedback.
Yes.
And then it has to go off to a professional because I've already gone over this like 3, 4 times now. And this is the hard limit. Yeah, for sure. Because I
Exactly.
used to just constantly edit stuff. Like, this is really the first year I've been sending stuff out for feedback,
Mm.
outside of like very small tiny groups. This is the first time I'm actually calling for feedback, which is like a larger thing.
Yeah.
This is the first time I'm actually getting ready to send stuff to a professional editor. So it's, for me, it's just this really scary hill I have to get over.
The first time is always going to be more like obsessive and then it'll get a bit easier. You'll get into the swing of things.
Exactly.
The
Just like short story format, you learn the process and it gets easier over time.
Exactly. So in this, reaching out and putting your stuff out into the world more, what inspired you to submit your story to the Stygian Collection?
So I think what really sold me, because I'm from the era way back in the day, when ebooks were first launching. I was in writing back then too, and I was doing stories, but my parents always warned me about scams. And a lot of them back in the day, self-publishing was a scam largely back in the day.
Yeah, those
They
those
would send
pages with all the
flyers out.
letters and
They would demand money up front, down
yeah.
payment for e-publishing. It was bad. It was bad. It's gotten a lot better now. There's a lot more transparency. There's a lot more research you can do. There's a lot of communities. But way back during AOL days,
Yes.
this stuff was largely scam based and it was pervasive. So I still have kind of that like old person mindset of like, what if it's scam?
Hmm.
You know, and I have to be so careful. So when I get emails in, I'm very careful with the emails that I get in because I get some interesting emails. Let's just say that. And when I first saw the email, like, I think I might have like seen some of your stuff before, in like related videos
Hmm.
and whatnot, but I didn't know a lot about your channel or about, because it was a brand new publishing venture as well. Like, it was
Yeah,
just launching, so
we are fresh.
completely new, very fresh. So this was back in January, and when I first saw it, because I'd already gotten a few like recruitments that were like a little, I don't know about this. And so I was very suspicious. But the thing that really sold me is when I actually looked into what you guys were doing with the collection, like what you were looking for, the theme, and how specific you were being with what you were looking for. I realized that I'm probably never in my life going to find a publisher that's directly in my alley this much. This is like clearly a once in a lifetime. And I remember thinking, I was just like, if this is a scam, I'm totally still going for it, because this is like the most perfectly curated to me scam I've ever seen, and props. So I went for it, and I was just like, I really hope that this is legit and that I can get in, because like this is, if I'm gonna have a very first publication, this is the thing that I want, because it's my kind of thing, because I was kind of preparing myself, because I was sending some stuff out to some short stories out to other publications, but a lot of them are more broad publications. They're not usually, as there are niche publications out there, absolutely, but they can be difficult to find because they're so niche.
Yeah.
So I've mostly been, submitting to broader publishing, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with it, but does mean that like the tonality of all the other stuff that would also be published alongside mine would likely be worlds apart.
And it's such a
Very
wider range to try and hit that theme too. Like if it's something that's just like a horror anthology or just fantasy or something like that.
exactly. And the thing about the Stygian collection is it was scary, spooky kind of stuff, but also it very much was trying to go for like almost an artful old feeling to it, almost like, there is a beauty in the scary stuff, and that was kind of like the vibe I was getting from it. So I was just like, okay, this, I do not see this every day. I really want this. So that's what originally drew me to it, and I am just so ecstatic that it's my first publication. I'm so
I
happy about it.
and I'm glad you got the image that we were trying to put across perfectly, and I'm very happy that we got past the spam paranoia, the
I'm so
the
paranoid.
scam paranoia. Well,
It's definitely me. It's not anyone else's problem. It's me.
like I understand though, because like I've worked in recruitment for websites before, so I've been on that end of like sending cold calling, but through emails. And so I automatically have in my head like anytime you cold message someone, the paranoia goes up, especially if you are from that sort of early internet generation. Like, I mean, I grew up without internet and I got it in like grade 8. So I was very aware of this stuff. And, I had relatives falling prey to scams. So it's sort of automatically in your head and you have to figure out like, okay, how am I going to be like so transparent and so open and get this message across? So I do try very hard to do that.
It
And with
worked. It
Stygian,
worked.
oh, I'm glad. And with Stygian, one of our goals is to be totally transparent because actually leading into this, I had some run-ins through Pay and a couple other friends with these self-publishing places that are still scamming people, like making them pay for an ISBN that you can generate on Amazon and like give us $800 more for your ISBN, stuff like that. And so I saw that and I was very angry about it because I knew of a few people because they look very legitimate, and then you dig into it and you're like, oh, this is not good at all, and everything's falsified and stuff. So seeing that, I was like, authors have it hard enough. Like we already have a hard enough time. This is already, a flooded industry where it's hard to, get yourself out there. So if we can make a little haven in the midst of that's fully transparent, where, the authors see everything and the backers see everything, then that would be kind of a good thing in the world. We're
Exactly.
hoping to do that.
I've kind of, when I talk to younger writers, especially fresh from college, and they talk to me about stuff and me going into publishing, I always tell them that writing, anyone can do it. Publishing, sadly, not for everybody,
Mhm.
especially considering how the industry is built, and that publishing largely isn't built for writing.
Yeah.
Publishing is built for business.
Yeah.
And that means that when you enter it, it truly is a separate field.
Yeah.
It's
You
not
have
even
to,
related to
you
writing.
have to become a product. It's about product and
Yes.
marketing.
It's very, very different for
Yeah.
sure.
Totally different creatures.
So I am so grateful that this was my first experience because Stygian society was so clear and transparent. That was It's been amazing first experience,
Oh, I'm glad.
honestly. Like from start to finish, everything's been very clear, very open. I have had very few questions, and when I did have a question, it was answered brilliantly. So this has been like the perfect first
Oh,
experience, and I
awesome.
am very ecstatic about it.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. That was my hope.
Yeah, because I feel like that's sadly not the norm for a
Yeah.
lot of writers. Their first experience, it might be fun to be published, but then their stuff gets copyrighted, it
Yeah.
gets dragged down with a publisher that goes under, and then they never see copyright again.
Yeah.
It's a horror
And
nightmare field out
locking
there.
in
So
those, yeah, like locking in the sales and stuff, removing it from sites, just like, okay, we're done selling, and then you can't do anything about it. Also, like lack of control over things like, art. I mean, with ours, we wound up doing the art, but we were sort of, I think everyone was excited about what we went with, so it was kind of a
they've
unanimous thing of like,
incorporated pieces of a
this
lot of
fits.
the works in the book, though.
Hmm.
And that's something that, again, you don't often see. And I think
Yeah.
because it's a longer process, you have to send information to the artist has to take time to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas for a lot of publishing houses, they'll just buy a pack of art or something from
I
someone for
know.
a flat rate fee and then just
There's
use it
there
across a bunch of different works.
the amount of like stock imagery and stock photos. And I mean, I will say I used stock photos for A Time When Demons, but when I was doing that again, it was like I want to get this out into the world. And now that I know more and I have a more of a direction and sort of am building a community, I'm like, okay, now I can do what I want with these covers. And Lori was just such a rock star with getting that art done so quickly too, because it took us a while to find her. And then I think she wound up doing like the cover and all the interior stuff in like 2 months, which was wild, like
Which is
considering what it is.
crazy. Yeah.
And then Chandra jumped in to do all the design because we had Lori do the black and white version of the cover and some like the spine, I'm just like the spine element and the little leaves and stuff at the back. But Chandra's the one who put that like blue drop over it and the texture and everything. And like they just came together so well. I was so happy.
So exciting. Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh.
So talking about YouTube and also, writing, as a creator on YouTube, how do you balance the demands of creating videos and working on your writing?
Not well. I'm gonna be real. Because I'm also a full-time teacher here in
Hmm.
Japan, and I'm at a point where like my industry is currently doing lots of events and things like that. So my time I'm working is kind of all over the map. It can be very, very stressful. That paired with trying to get, writing out and whatnot, as well as just being randomly ill and sick. It's been a real struggle. For me, when I started my YouTube originally, way back in, like, I've been on YouTube since ye olden times,
Okay.
but I started doing videos on my channel in, I believe, 2019, I believe. 2000, well, actually, I might have tried as far as 2018. I'm not positive. But it didn't work. And I failed. I only had like a few videos consistently, and then I dropped off the face of the map for about a year, 2 years. And the reason for that is I didn't have a really clear direction with the
Mhm.
channel, and I didn't have a clear direction of how I organized time and my effort that I was putting into it. And so when I came back to it after I had, some mental health crisis and stuff like that, and I started actually like buckling down and breaking everything down, um, then I realized that I really need a more clear goal and vision. And for
Mhm.
me, it became I need to just start killing it. I need to start getting stuff done, getting stuff out, kind of like you said, just get out in the world, even if it's not the most perfect work ever.
Yeah.
Making that progress, because the first one's the hardest.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's like you might have trials with certain kinds of projects, but that fear of getting something out in the world, you've faced it.
You've
So
ripped
even
the
though it's still
Band-Aid off.
right, even though it's still a little scary, it's not that same extreme fear. You kind of address some of that.
Yeah.
So I just was like, okay, I really just need to get stuff out. But at the time, I hadn't gotten a lot of traction in terms of editing and whatnot. So I realized, I was like, okay, I have to address the editing first and foremost. So I was like, okay, that's what the channel is going to be. Then it's going to be mostly editing content and content about just trying to encourage a lot of young writers too, because I was also seeing a lot of either fear mongering
Yeah.
towards younger writers,
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
much like making it seem scarier than it is. And the
Yeah.
writing itself is really not scary. The scary part is not the writing. It's definitely the publishing. And that's a different thing. And I always tell people that, like, you can write as much as you want, hun. That's not the scary thing. That's not the scary monster. And when you do face a scary monster, there are communities that can help you.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing. You are not alone. And if you have got questions, ask the question. Just ask the question. Chances are someone's got an answer somewhere. It might take a bit of digging to find it, but you can find it. And definitely ask, because a lot of people who have books out, who have been doing this for a while, they're more than happy to like spill the tea on what places to go to and what places to stay away from, because they've been there. And they're more than willing to talk about it if you just ask.
I find that Authortube is a really good community for that because there isn't really competition. Like I've seen booktube drama, like videos about that, which I just avoid, but I've never had anything like that come up in Authortube. And I feel like there are a lot of people out there, like myself included. One of my things is inspiring, encouraging writers. Like whenever I see someone who's saying I'm an aspiring writer, I'm like, no, you are a writer. You are a writer. Own that. If you're writing, you're a writer. Like feel that, feel positive about it because like you need that drive and that positivity if you are going to get to that point of publishing, whether it's self-publishing or traditional publishing, because yeah, those are the scary parts.
Exactly. Yeah. So like I try to like that wording is really important. It's another thing I really focus on my channel is like the why behind it and the intention of what people are doing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times every time I talk to a young writer and they're stuck in something, it's just sitting them down and being like, okay, let's work through what you're doing. What's the point of what you're doing? What's the thing that makes you happy when you write this scene?
Yeah.
What about your characters makes you happy? What makes you bored and uninterested? Because chances are that's going to show you all the problems right then and there. It's just your own personal tastes and what you're into. That's going to be the first indicator. So that's kind of how I started getting going on my channel. And right now, especially since, I now have like chronic migraines and things like that randomly. I have one this morning, so I just pop medicine. We're doing our best. Okay. So it's kind of like,
I'm glad you're here.
That, the best we do. Yeah, we do the best we can. And I kind of just take it, like I plan ahead. I'm usually got videos planned for 2 to 3 months in advance. And filming, unfortunately, is the thing that's just kind of tricky. Like I have a bunch of things scripted, but I just don't have the time to film.
Yeah.
And so like for me, I was supposed to film something this week. I wasn't able to do so due to medical exams that I had to go to and whatnot. So that had to be pushed. So now I'm looking at maybe something on the weekend. I don't know. We'll see how quickly I can get something filmed and up. But I kind of try to balance it with videos that I know take more editing, that I know take more time to film. Those I kind of try to spread them out. So there's only one per month, if that. And then the other videos are less intensive. They're videos that I can do in one take. They're videos that are pretty much straight through, or like this week is probably going to be an ASMR kind of video because I've got a bunch of letter writing to do, actually old school letter writing. So I'm probably going to do something like that, just simply to, ease the burden of just how much scripting, how much editing, because the ASMR needs minimum editing. I do edit a little bit, just make sure there are no really loud sounds, but it's pretty easy versus a lot of talking or worse vlogs. I almost never do vlogs. I think vlogs are very difficult to do, honestly.
Yeah, they
It's so
are.
much editing. It's so much.
Yeah.
So
I did a
it's
bit
not
of
my thing,
that like in my
not
first
my speciality.
NaNoWriMos. I
Yeah,
did
there's
some of
some
that
other
like
authors out there that are very good at it. I'm not one of those.
I see I'm not outgoing enough to vlog and I'm not thinking of that sort of I've tried to get my brain into it a bit, but like it just doesn't want to thinking of like, content all the time, that sort of thing. So I would go through a whole day during NaNoWriMo. I was like, oh, I was supposed to be vlogging during this day. And then if I went outside, I would sort of start filming outside a little bit, and then I would get very uncomfortable very quickly. I like people are gonna look at me. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be that person out
Filming
there with the camera.
outside takes an amount of guts that I just don't have. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
I've done
I
like very
haven't
little
showed very
bits.
much. I haven't showed very much of where I live on YouTube.
Mm,
One, because of safety, but
yeah.
even when I go out into the city, like sometimes I intend to do some filming and I just don't because it's
Yeah,
just so intimidating
it
to
is.
film.
I know. I don't
So
get how
yeah,
people to do it, how they do
I
it. It's
feel
just
that.
like a different level of outgoing.
Yes, for sure. So my channel mostly focuses on things like, trying to look at the structure of writing, things I'm learning about new ways to structure, new ways to plot,
Mhm.
issues I'm running into and how I'm trying to solve them and asking for how other people solve them. And kind of, I try to get discussion as much as I can. And that's something that I really, really want to see because I'm old school YouTube. So I'm from back in the day when it was all about community.
Yeah.
It wasn't, you couldn't monetize back in the day. There was no
Yeah.
monetization. I'm still not monetized now, so it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
neither am I.
I live in Japan. I don't even know if I can over here. So yeah, it's, that's kind of where my YouTube focus is. But the balancing with normal life, I feel like that's
It's
always going to be kind of a struggle, especially when, you've got a full-time job and stuff. I don't
yeah.
think there's any easy way to manage it. I think the best way I have is just kind of scripting beforehand so I know how much labor is going to go into these videos and
Hmm.
then just trying to space out the larger ones, space out the ones that need more work, more labor. When I do have enough time to film more than one thing, I'll try to film multiple things in a day and just try to knock it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tricky. I don't think there's an easy answer, sadly.
Well, I'm on the same page as you right now. I mean, with Stygian, because I have a full-time job, and then I'm doing the small press, and then there's my channel, and then I also have the Haunted Montreal channel. And right now we're taking a break from Haunted Montreal for a month. But with my own channel, I was like, this is the thing that's got to get dropped right now. Because if people want to follow me, they can follow what's going on with Stygian, and then I'll come back with something eventually. But there's always that point where like you got to cut something. But yeah, like doing as much as you can in advance, I think is the only answer sometimes.
Do you get
But
any sleep with that much stuff on
um
your plate? Do you sleep?
not actually much in the last month, but that's
Oh my God.
actually from outside factors
Oh my
in our
God.
apartment, which we did not need happening right at this time, but they are happening. So
When it rains, it
it's been
pours.
fun. Yeah, it does.
Oh my
Um,
God.
looping back actually to what you said about community and like trying to get conversations going, how do you feel now about being part of an anthology that sort of tries to bring community together and features the works of other Authortube creators?
I love that. Especially because, once again, like this is kind of a newer venture. So while we've got a pretty decent mix of people, I feel like,
Hmm.
because we have some people that have been writing for a while and it's really interesting because we had that mix of people where we have some people who have a couple books under their belt, they've already been published, but we also have more people like me where this is their first round, their first go around, and they've never done something before, so they're completely fresh to the industry.
Hmm.
And so I think it's a really interesting mix and blend of voices and different tones of story. So I think that's really awesome. And I'm really happy to be a part of it, especially because like, sometimes when you try for some of these other literary magazines, they've got a set group of people who tend to do their stuff. And it's kind of a clique. And
Yeah,
even if you do get in, even if you do get in, it's kind of like I'm the other person now. Like this is I'm the other woman. Like
yeah.
it's weird. It's a weird
It can get
experience.
very clicky for sure. Like
Yeah, sadly.
absolutely. Like I think I've mentioned this a bit, but like my dad's in publishing. He colors comics and writes them and stuff. So I did grow up with some of that and like this general, idea of it. And I did see a lot of the cliquishness and cattiness. So I say that Authortube is a very friendly community, and that's sort of in comparison to that next realm of trad publishing and anthologies, because the clicks are out there, the cattiness is out there for sure, like
For
it's
sure.
there.
Yes. I was really happy to not see that and the
Yeah.
cattiness and if because there's no reason for it. We're all trying to do our best to get our work out there in the world, and it's far better to help each other as best we
Mhm.
can through that and kind of build a community, especially a community that's very like open minded and very willing to have discussions on various topics and really talk to each other and not just be like, well, you can only do this because that's what our group does. We do this thing.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Yeah, and
what?
I'm hoping we can grow that more and bring more people in, and like with the Stygian network that we're putting out, hopefully, because I know that especially as writers, you can get very much into what you're doing, and I'm guilty of that for sure. I was talking with I think it was when I was talking to Margaret or Jolene, just about how I always want to watch everyone's videos, but it's so hard to like get the time for that and stuff. So I'm hoping to try to keep that momentum going, with the understanding that we are all very busy and we all want to support each other, and it can be hard sometimes. So I feel with that network, and for anyone who's watching who doesn't know what I'm talking about, we're starting up a little Excel doc that we can share among authors. So I mean, if you're interested, feel free to reach out, where you can post your stuff and then you check in and go, oh, someone wants me to watch this video, and share it, and I'm going to check it out. And I think that might make it a bit easier to keep that connection up and running.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it's hard to keep up with everything
Yeah, it
because
really
we're all
is.
so busy, but we're all also trying to launch projects and things like
Yeah,
that for sure.
everyone has so much going on, and it's been so cool having these one-on-one conversations, because I'm getting to hear like more about what everyone's doing, and it's so exciting. Like when you start looking at these, I think you'll see what I mean. Like every person I'm talking to, I'm like, oh, you're doing this, and I want to read this. It's just so much more, but it's also great. So,
There's some great projects going on right now.
there are. It's very cool. I just love being in this space right now. So, what are your hopes and expectations for the Stygian collection now that it's out in the world and people are starting to read it?
Well, I hope a lot of people, read it and really enjoy it. Just enjoy it first off. And also, I hope that some people who are like who I know who are supporting me and buying it, they're not much into short stories. Like circling back to our short story collect
Hmm.
like conversation earlier, because they're reading this collection now of short stories, it's giving them like, oh, I've never read this many short stories all at once before,
Yeah.
and they're kind of getting curious, like maybe I want to try to. So I have like a friend of mine recently, she just contacted me. She's like, I was so inspired when I read your short story. I finished one of my short stories that's been like
Oh,
on the back burner for years. She
oh,
finally
that's so
finished it
great.
recently. So it just inspired her to just, that final push to finish that short story of hers. Um, and that's kind of, I guess, what I would that's what makes me happy when people are like, yes, I enjoyed it, and also I was compelled to try something, I was compelled to finish something, I was compelled to also do something amazing
That's
with
my
the things
favorite
that I
thing
have.
too.
Yeah, being an inspiration and encouragement for others to try and to get that thing finished, to make an attempt, and even if it's a little scary, to try to see what they can do. That's always just makes me so happy, and that's one of my hopes for any of my writing, but especially short stories. I feel I have a pretty good power for that.
Hmm. Anytime you can put something out into the world and it creates more creativity, like we always need more of that. I think
Absolutely.
that's a really nice sentiment to just sort of tie this up with. But as we wind it up, what all are you working on? Can you tell us about, I mean, you've mentioned you're working on a book. What's everything you're working on? What's going to be on your channel coming up? What can people see from you over the next months?
Okay, so right now I am getting feedback from other authors on my first novel, which is just tentatively called Project Clock, not finished work name, just in a project name, Project Clockwork, and that one is a science fiction dark fantasy combination, and that one is about a starship captain who is put on mission to investigate an unidentified station object. It's very large. They're not sure what it is, and there may or may not be a survivor on. There's a distress call, so they have to investigate that, and there may or may not involve some interdimensional aliens may be
Ooh,
involved. It's a very
aliens are
fun,
good.
very kind of slightly creepy novel, and that right now is getting feedback, so I hope to go through professional editing later this year. So I'll be chronicling that whole experience, my experience with getting professionally edited, like how much it's realistically costing to get something like that done for a certain kind of size book. And I'll be sharing that kind of information for other people who are interested in getting things professionally done and handled. Now show up on my channel later in the year. As for right now with new works, I'm currently working on a rewrite for another novel of mine, which is just fantasy. And it has some dark elements, but it's mostly fantasy. I haven't written that in a while, so it's kind of interesting going back to that. So I'm working on that right now, and that is in draft 1 stage. So that's very early on. So that's kind of slow progress right now. I'm mostly focused on editing and the feedback.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 major things that are going on right now. I also would like to get some more short stories out, but that's here and there. So I'll talk about that as it goes on. But mostly right now, it's a lot of editing. It's a lot of feedback. I have my feedback fear series where I'm going over my fears of feedback and trying to tackle them and trying to like tackle the voices in my head, which are really, really loud in that whole experience of just constantly dealing with that anxiety that kind of never stops. And so those are the kinds of things that I'm doing right now on my YouTube channel.
Oh, those are very valuable things. Just in my past couple years of putting out information and, about writing and help, like I find that those are areas where people need the help and the support the most. So I think you're going to get a lot of interest in that. And I think it's a great thing to be doing. So yeah, as I said earlier, I'll be linking everything. So for anyone watching who's interested in tackling their own fears, definitely give Cory a follow. And yeah, that is it for our interview this evening. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been really great talking, like also before the interview. It's been fun getting to know you a little more. And I really look forward to collaborating as we go along and seeing how all of our projects and creativity grow.
Thank you so much for interviewing me. This has been such a great process with the Stygian Society. This has been so fun. And I am so excited to see hopefully more collections in the future, like a collection 2 or 3 in the future. That would be so fun.
Maybe.
I hope so. That would be so fun. So I look forward to seeing more stuff from Stygian Society as well.
There will be a lot more.
Very
So
exciting.
with that, I will give you back the rest of your day since we're at opposite odds
Same for
here.
me.
And yeah, I'll talk to you again soon.